Every great conversation begins between two thoughts.
Can I tell you about something that happened to me last month that I still think about?
Of course.
I was at a work event, not a big one, maybe 30 people I mostly know. And I walked in and just something switched. Heart racing, couldn't quite get a full breath, suddenly very aware of my hands and where to put them. And this voice in my head going, "Everyone can see that you're weird right now."
And the more you noticed it, the worse it got.
Yeah. I ended up standing near the food table for 40 minutes, pretending to be very interested in the cheese selection.
The cheese table, the universal refuge of the socially anxious.
It had a very nice brie, but yes. And the thing that frustrated me most afterwards was, I know these people. I wasn't in danger. There was absolutely nothing objectively threatening about that room. And yet my body had completely taken over and decided otherwise.
That frustration, knowing there's no real threat but feeling one anyway, is one of the most common and most disorienting things about social anxiety and panic. And it points to something really important. The response isn't happening in your rational mind. It's happening in your body, in your nervous system. And that means thinking your way out of it, telling yourself to calm down, reminding yourself it's not dangerous, rarely works in the moment.
Because the body isn't listening to the rational mind when it's already in that state.
The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, has essentially hijacked the system. And once that happens, the prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking part, becomes significantly less accessible. You can't reason with a nervous system in fight or flight, not directly, but you can reach it through the body, through specific physical inputs that speak the nervous system's own language.
And that's what these 6 rules are about, not thinking differently, doing something physically that interrupts the response at its source.
Exactly. 6 body-based techniques, all grounded in neuroscience and physiology, that can genuinely shift the state of the nervous system in real time, not eventually, not after weeks of practice, in the moment, sometimes within seconds.
Tell me all 6, because I needed them at that event.
The first and the fastest acting of all of them is something researchers call the physiological sigh, which sounds technical, but the technique itself is extraordinarily simple, and the science behind it is genuinely remarkable.
What is it?
A double inhale through the nose, 2 quick sniffs, followed by 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. That's it. 1 breath pattern. And research published in Cell Reports Medicine from Stanford University found that this specific breathing pattern reduces physiological arousal more rapidly than any other breathing technique studied, including meditation, including box breathing, including slow breathing generally.
Why does 2 inhales and 1 exhale work better than just breathing slowly?
Because of what happens in the lungs. When we're anxious, tiny air sacs in the lungs called alveoli collapse under stress. The double inhale reinflates them. And then the extended exhale, the long, slow breath out, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, the biological opposite of fight or flight. Extended exhalation increases vagal tone through mechanical and chemical receptors in the lungs and cardiovascular system. And higher vagal tone means lower anxiety, measurably, almost immediately.
So it's not just calming in a vague way, it's doing something specific in the physiology.
Very specific. The exhale is the key. Most people when anxious do the opposite. Short, quick, shallow breaths that feed more oxygen into an already activated system. The physiological sigh deliberately reverses that. It tells the nervous system, through the body's own chemistry, the threat is over. You can come down now.
And you can do it anywhere, at the cheese table, in a meeting, before a presentation.
Silently, invisibly, in under 10 seconds. And the second technique works through what's called the vagus nerve, which is perhaps the most important nerve most people have never heard of.
I've heard the name, but I don't think I properly understand what it is.
The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the body. As a central component of the parasympathetic nervous system, it has a critical role in autonomic regulation. It runs from the brainstem all the way down through the heart, lungs, and digestive system. And it is essentially the primary communication highway between the body and the brain. When vagal tone is high, the nervous system is regulated, calm, flexible. When vagal tone is low, anxiety increases, reactivity increases, social engagement becomes harder.
And social anxiety is specifically associated with reduced heart rate variability, which is a direct measure of vagal function.
Exactly, which means activating the vagus nerve directly is one of the most powerful things you can do for social anxiety specifically. And you can do it in several ways that require nothing except your own body. Cold water on the face or the back of the neck. Humming or singing, even quietly. Gargling with water. Slow, deep breathing with extended exhale, which connects back to the first technique. All of these stimulate vagal tone directly. All produce measurable reductions in heart rate and anxiety response.
So humming to yourself quietly before walking into a difficult social situation is actually neurologically doing something real.
Stimulating the vagus nerve through vibration in the throat, which increases parasympathetic activity, which reduces the anxiety response. Not a placebo. A physiological intervention available to anyone with a voice.
What's the third technique?
This one I find genuinely extraordinary because it's so counterintuitive. It's called gaze widening, or peripheral vision activation. And research in threat perception shows something fascinating about what happens to vision when the brain enters an anxious state.
What happens?
Vision narrows. Literally. The anxious brain shifts into what researchers call tunnel vision, focusing intensely on the perceived threat source. In social anxiety, that usually means hyper-focusing on other people's faces, scanning for signs of judgment, watching for micro-expressions that might indicate disapproval. And this narrowed focus actually feeds the anxiety. It keeps the threat detection system activated because it keeps finding things to evaluate.
You're essentially searching for evidence that you're being judged, and the narrowed vision helps you find it.
Or imagine it. And the intervention is widening the gaze deliberately, softening the eyes, expanding awareness to peripheral vision, taking in the whole room rather than focusing tightly on any one person or thing. This simple physical shift, from narrow-focused vision to wide peripheral awareness, activates a different part of the nervous system. Research on panoramic vision shows it is associated with the parasympathetic state, the calm, relaxed state, rather than the sympathetic fight-or-flight state.
Because peripheral vision is the mode you use when you're safe and relaxed, not when you're scanning for threats.
Exactly. Animals in the wild use tunnel vision when hunting or being hunted. They use panoramic peripheral vision when resting and safe. Your nervous system carries those same associations. Widen the gaze, and the brain receives the signal, this is not a threat situation. The anxiety response begins to soften.
And you can do it in the middle of a conversation. Nobody even knows.
Invisible. Immediate. And the fourth technique is what researchers call proprioceptive anchoring, which is about using physical sensation, specifically pressure and weight, to ground the nervous system in the present moment.
This is related to grounding, like the 5-4-3-2-1 technique we talked about in our very first conversation.
The same principle, but specifically through proprioception, which is the body's sense of its own position in space, the feeling of your feet on the floor, the pressure of your back against a chair, the weight of your hands in your lap. These sensory signals travel through a completely different neural pathway than threat signals, and deliberately focusing attention on them, really feeling them, interrupts the anxiety loop by directing the nervous system's attention toward neutral physical reality rather than the imagined social threat.
So pressing your feet deliberately into the floor and really feeling that pressure is actually doing something to the nervous system.
Research on somatic grounding techniques consistently shows that directing attention to proprioceptive sensation reduces activity in the threat processing centers of the brain. Because you cannot simultaneously fully process a physical sensation and a catastrophic social thought, the attention can only go to one place at a time. and physical sensation is always more real than an imagined judgment.
Ground yourself in what is actually happening, not what the anxious mind is predicting might happen.
Your feet are on the floor. That is real. The thought that everyone is judging you is a prediction, not a fact. And the body knows the difference if you give it the right input.
What's the fifth technique?
Heart rate variability smoothing, which sounds complex, but in practice is simply controlled resonance breathing. Research, including a comprehensive systematic review published through major psychophysiology journals in 2025, consistently shows that breathing at approximately 5 to 6 breaths per minute creates what's called cardiac coherence, a state where the heart rate variability pattern becomes smooth and rhythmic rather than erratic. And voluntary slow breathing and HRV biofeedback have been meta-analytically shown to increase HRV and improve anxiety.
And higher HRV means lower anxiety.
Measurably, HRV is a physiological measure reflecting the dynamic relationship between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and deficient HRV shows promise as a biomarker of pathological anxiety. So improving HRV in real time through slow, rhythmic breathing directly shifts the balance away from anxiety and toward regulation. The practical technique is simple. Inhale for 5 counts. Exhale for 5 counts. Repeat. The rhythm itself, that steady, predictable pattern, is what creates the coherence. And the coherence is what calms the system.
5 in, 5 out. Slow, rhythmic, and the heart literally smooths out.
The variability pattern becomes coherent rather than chaotic. And a coherent heart rate sends a very different signal to the brain than a chaotic one. Calm, regulated, safe. The brain reads the body's state and adjusts accordingly. This is the body communicating upward to the brain, rather than the brain trying to talk the body down. And the body, in this direction, is far more persuasive.
The sixth technique?
Cognitive restructuring, but specifically through what researchers call nomenclature, naming, labeling. And this one bridges the physical and the psychological in a way that makes it uniquely powerful for the moment of acute social anxiety.
We talked about affect labeling in the Power of Words episode. Naming an emotion reduces its intensity.
Same mechanism, but applied specifically to the anxiety experience in real time. Instead of trying to suppress or argue with the anxious feeling, you name it precisely. Not just, I'm anxious, but I am experiencing a nervous system activation response triggered by a social evaluation threat. My amygdala has detected a perceived threat. My body is preparing to respond. This is a known biological process. It is not dangerous. It will pass.
That's almost clinical, but I can see how that distance would help.
Because naming it precisely does 2 things simultaneously. First, it activates the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, which begins to counterbalance the amygdala response. And second, it reframes the experience from something happening to you, something frightening and out of control, to something you can observe and describe. A biological process, not a personal catastrophe.
You become the observer of the anxiety, rather than the person being consumed by it.
And research consistently shows that this observer position, that slight cognitive distance from the experience, measurably reduces its intensity. Not because the feeling disappears, but because you stopped fighting it. And in that acceptance of the experience, the nervous system stops receiving the additional stress signal of fighting itself, which was amplifying everything.
You stop being afraid of the anxiety, and the anxiety, without that second layer of fear feeding it, begins to settle.
Almost always. Because the anxiety about the anxiety, the panic about the panic, is often what transforms a manageable discomfort into a full, overwhelming experience. Remove that second layer, and what remains is uncomfortable, but survivable. And the body knows how to move through something survivable.
I keep thinking about that event, the cheese table, and I think if I had known even 2 of these 6 things in that moment, the experience would have been completely different. Not because the anxiety wouldn't have come, but because I would have had something to do with it instead of just drowning in it.
That's exactly the point. These techniques don't prevent anxiety from arriving. Social anxiety, in some form, is part of being a social creature with a nervous system designed to care about belonging. What they do is give you a way to work with what arrives, to meet it at the level where it actually lives, in the body, rather than trying to defeat it entirely through thinking.
You can't think your way out of a body-based response, but you can breathe your way out, hum your way out, widen your gaze, feel the floor, slow the heart, name what's happening.
All available to you, right now, in any room, at any cheese table in the world.
The brie will never look the same to me again.
Perhaps that's for the best.
If you have felt that switch, that moment when your body decided a perfectly safe room was dangerous, you are not broken. You are not weak. You have a nervous system doing exactly what nervous systems do. The question was never whether it would happen. It was whether you had anything to do with it when it did. Now you have 6 things.
Start with the physiological sigh. 2 quick inhales through the nose, 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. Do it right now if you want. Feel what happens. That is your nervous system responding to a direct physical input. That is your body, which felt out of control, coming back to you. 1 breath at a time.
Your body was never your enemy in those moments. It was just waiting for the right signal.
Give it one.
Thank you for being here with us today. This one felt important.
If this gave you something real for the next difficult room, share it with someone who also knows where the cheese table is.
And our question before you go.
Which of these 6 techniques will you try first? And is there a specific situation where you wish you had known this sooner?
Tell us in the comments. We read every single one. Always.
Until next time.
Stay curious, stay kind, and next time, take a breath before you walk in.